Hey there, good morning, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and this is your week ahead forecast for the week of July 1st through July 7th. I'm coming at you on Thursday here, even though you're probably seeing this on a Sunday, because I'm preparing my forecast for the week ahead, because today I'm getting ready to go to the Great Lakes Astrology Conference that's happening today on Thursday through Sunday. So by the time you see this and this is released, I'll have been meeting all these wonderful astrologers and taking in lectures and hopefully, connecting with people around the globe, from around the globe, to celebrate astrology. So, one of the things that I'm doing this weekend is talking about how to get your voice out there on social media and how to promote your astrology practice. And one of the things that I talk about in my lecture is working ahead. So this is kind of practicing what I'm going to be preaching here. That's the beauty of an ephemeris and some of these programs that we have. We can look ahead and see what's going to be happening in the sky. So I may be going a little quickly today, but I wanted to make sure that I got you prepared, because there's some pretty big transits that are happening next week, and we want to, have maybe a little bit of a heads up and think about how we're going to plan ahead here. Okay, let's dive right in. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, Monday, July 1st. So let's just do a little overview of the week here. A couple very important things. We have, first and foremost, is going to be a new moon solar eclipse on Tuesday, July 2nd. So we're going to spend some time chatting about that. Mars moves into Leo this week, and then conjoin with Mercury. We'll speak on that. Venus is moving into Cancer in the middle of the week. Those are the main transits that we're going to be looking at, as well as just a little bit of a tour through the moon cycles that we have that we're going to be going through here. That's always what we want to do on our week ahead, is kind of see what the moon looks like. And with the new moon, we're going to be gaining light as we go through the week, and trying to figure out how to plant the seeds that we want. The establishment of new cycles, new energy, new events that are going to come up. It's not just energy. That's another vocal tick I want to expand on. Energy is a good word, but there are actual tangible events that we have to deal with rather than just a mood. So you are going to see the popping up of new events in your life that you have to deal with, and that may require either a shifting, a pivoting, or just some of your energy and passion. Our intentions are going to be important as we move forward through this week, and then making the adjustments that need to be made as the what is revealed becomes integrated into our life. So let's take a look at Monday here. Monday is going to start out with a Gemini moon here in the last decan of Gemini, okay? And we are in the last phases of a balsamic moon. So this is Monday, maybe a little bit of a releasing phase where we're really preparing ourselves for the new events that are going to be coming forth at the new moon, the new impulses, the new realizations, the new seeds of consciousness that are coming to light and demanding to be planted within the garden or the soil of our lives. So as we move forward through the day on Monday, we're going to see a conjunction with Venus. So if I move my... Oops, let's get rid of this here. Clear. Bing. If we move this forward a few hours, we're going to see that the moon here is getting closer and closer to a conjunction with Venus. So communication may be something that is coming up for you this week, with moon and Venus being in the temple or the domicile of Mercury. Of course, Mercury has just moved into Leo in the last week, and some of our communications may be filled with a little more drama than normal. We may be, trying to communicate who we are and our essence, because Mercury is hanging out in the domicile of the sun. And the sun being associated with identity, with the light of consciousness, with your intellect, and those two things are going to be combined with being in the first decan of Leo, which I showed you last week was associated with the Five of Wands, where you see these young gentlemen kind of in a mock battle, jockeying for position and the spotlight, as we are told in 36 Faces by Austin Coppock. So when we are trying to communicate who we are and what we want, we may run into some challenges with that. We're going to see Mercury starting to move into a square with Uranus, so there may be some shocking events or communications that we're having to deal with. Maybe we're expressing ourselves in a completely new way, and that is something that may be difficult for the people around us right away. A lot of the times when we start to make shifts of consciousness and really important changes in our life and our life path, we can get some feedback that may not always be the most fun, because a lot of the time people put us in a bit of a box, a bit of a category, and that's what keeps us feeling safe to them. And that is something to be aware of as you're making some of the changes that you need to in your life. There may be some people in your life that are your biggest cheerleaders and supporters, and you should surround yourself with those folks. But you also need to hear some of the feedback that happens when you are testing out a new enterprise. But don't get too discouraged about it, because a lot of the times people's reaction to what you are doing is more about them and more about what they are feeling in that moment rather than the action that you've taken. The action you've taken may be triggering something in them, but ultimately they're coming from it from their own perspective. So it's very important to kind of keep that in mind if you're getting into any kind of communications with people where you're asserting yourself, may be creating a little bit of a ripple effect and a little bit of a wave. It's normal. And here's the thing, people are going to get used to it. If they see that you're sincere and that you're serious about what you're doing, and that what you're doing is based on a connection with your higher self rather than just ego, then eventually they may come around and you may have support. Now, it is important that what you're doing is, based on something that eventually could be of benefit, not just to yourself, but to the people in your life, the people you care about, your audience. The greatest leaders are the ones that are in service to people. So keep that in mind when you're trying to initiate your new ventures for the summer, especially at the new moon eclipse here. So that's what we've got kind of on Monday here in the early evening, about 5:50 or so Eastern time. We're going to have a conjunction with the moon and Venus. And then as we move forward through the evening, we're going to see the moon move into Cancer. Okay. So around 9 o'clock or so, 9 or 9:30 Eastern time, the moon is going to gain dignity into the sign of Cancer, her home sign. So the moon is the planet or the deity that rules or is the steward of the temple of Cancer. It's not like she's the queen of that particular domicile. She is responsible for providing resources for anyone or any deity that is staying within that temple or within that domicile. So right now we have the sun staying within the domicile of Cancer, and we're going to have Venus following suit fairly soon. So when the sun is in Cancer, generally the people that are residing in her sign or temple are going to be provided for fairly well, because the host is home. She knows where everything is, and she's able to be a good host. Now, one of the conditions that I wanted to talk about as we move into Tuesday, that is already happening on Monday, is a condition that we spoke about at the full moon, called the moon being under the bond. So in Hellenistic and ancient astrology, they had a condition where when the moon was in 15 degrees on either side of the sun, whether at the new moon or the full moon, it was said to be under the bond. This was a weakening condition that was similar to when planets go under the beams of the sun when they're in conjunction. Like, so for example, Venus is going to be moving under the beams of the sun in fairly short order as well. and that's kind of like a weakening position for the planets. The sun, is a very strong presence. It's the king, and the king is generally benevolent until you get too close. If you get too close to the king, you start to get burned up under the heat. And there's also this quality of invisibility that happens with a planet that is too close to the sun, because it basically blocks everything else out. So this is something to keep in mind when we are, experiencing the end of the balsamic moon as we're moving into the conjunction of the sun and the moon. So things associated with the moon could be weakened. Now, it's an interesting thing that I'm not quite sure about, is sometimes when a planet is in its own domicile, it is said to be in its chariot or protected from the beams of the sun. And it's kind of like you have this canvas over top of like in old ancient chariots, they had these sun roofs, I guess, like convertibles. They're convertibles. You could roll the top down and, go race around the Coliseum with your fabulous steed or whatnot. And so, that was a condition when a planet was in its own domicile, or potentially in another position of dignity like exaltation or triplicity. It was said to be protected from the beams of the sun. Now, I'm not exactly sure if that is true with the moon in Cancer going across the sun here. I think there is potential for that, although I would keep an eye on significations of the moon still being weakened over the course of the week. And if you have any thoughts on that, feel free to leave a comment in the YouTube section here. I'd be interested to hear what you think about the moon being in Cancer in her own domicile, and if she's weakened or not being in conjunction with the sun, or if she's protected with that chariot type of condition. Okay, so late Monday afternoon, we are going to see that bonded condition. Now here we've got it's beginning already, because the moon is within that 15-degree distance between the sun. So that's something to keep an eye on. So there's a potential for some things associated with the nurturing quality being possibly weakened, possibly going underground, possibly being hidden. A lot of things hidden behind the scenes this week. The sun is going to be moving into the second decan of Cancer, and we should chat about that when we talk about Tuesday here. What we're going to do first is we're going to look at Mars here moving into Leo. Sorry, I skipped ahead. I apologize for going a little fast this week. I'm just trying to get one out there for you before I have to go meet and greet with all the folks. So we see here that the Mars has moved into Leo. It's at 0 degrees Leo now, and coming into a calasis with Mercury, which, remember, is a conjunction by 3 degrees. It's not quite there yet, but it's going to be moving into that condition. Or it's kind of like a unification, a gluing together of those planets. So this is going to really heat up our communications for the beginning of the week. A lot of the things that we were trying to get out there as far as our own personal desires and our personal, intentions are going to get the heat of Mars and going to get a little bit sped up. We might be a little bit more forceful with putting our ideas and communications out there. And that's something to keep in mind this week, that everybody is feeling riled up about the new starts that they want to make, the new seeds that they want to plant, their own ideas, their own subjective perspectives. So it's very important to kind of take a deep breath, leave some space for other people to either talk about what they're excited about or to hear some feedback on your idea, because you may be starting to move a little bit too quickly once Mars moves into Leo there. And that may shake things up in a way that could be damaging on some level. Mars and Mercury are still going to be in this square, okay, or starting to come into this square aspect with Uranus. So, the way that you may be expressing yourself may be causing some disruptions in the more secure foundations of your life, which is represented by Uranus in the sign of Taurus. And that's happening over the next 7 years anyway. But when we get aspects to that planet, we're going to feel those shakeups and those triggers a little bit more strongly. So if you've experienced some stuff this weekend at social events or whatnot, you may have some new ideas that you want to implement. I would caution you just to take your time. Rome wasn't built in a day. You're going to have a transition period between the eclipses. Eclipses generally come back to back with the new moon and the full moon, the new moon solar eclipse and the full moon lunar eclipse. And there is this kind of, I guess it's a Bardo type of period, a liminal space in between where we feel a little shaken up. And we have to kind of live into those changes. And new moons generally are triggers for changes anyway, but when they're close to the nodes that we see when we have eclipses, they are supercharged and they are really big chapter markers, not just monthly chapter markers, but like every 6 months. This is setting the tone for the next 6 months of your life. And then there's a bigger cycle that is, I think, about 18 years from the last degree that eclipse happened in. And so I want you to think about the things that are coming into your life now in the Cancer ruled area of your chart. And, evaluate over the last couple days here what new start you want to make, but get ready for some changes and try to relax into those changes rather than just taking action too quickly. All right, so let's take a look at Tuesday here. Let's take a look at that new moon. Okay, as we roll into Tuesday, we're going to see in the very early morning hours, we're going to have a square between the moon and Chiron. Also, we're going to have a sextile of the moon and Uranus. Always, this may not be true for everybody since there may be people viewing this in different time zones, but generally it's always nice to me when there's like a difficult aspect that's happening when I'm sleeping, because then I can work it out in my dreams rather than having to deal with the reality of it. Now, that may not be great for restful sleep, but when you wake up, you can be like, oh, that was a dream. And I get to make a choice today as to how I'm going to deal with whatever my subconscious was wrestling with for that evening. So the new moon is going to be happening in the afternoon. In my time zone here in Eastern Standard Time in America, it's going to be about 3:16 p.m. So we'll go forward ahead here. Now you can see that there's a conjunction at 10 degrees of Cancer between the sun and the moon. What we are looking at here with the second decan of Cancer, the second 10-degree section of Cancer, is represented by the Three of Cups. So here we see three figures, three ladies celebrating and raising their cup in celebration. This card was called Abundance by Aleister Crowley, and this is called The Walled Garden by Austin Coppock. And there are themes of celebration. It's opposite Capricorn. Capricorn 2 is about the work that has to be done, and this may be about the respite that we take from that work, the celebration, maybe the completion of that work. There's also a theme of something trying to be birthed at this time of the year. Summer is where all the babies are around. Either there are pregnant animals, there are little babies that have been brought into the world, and they're being nurtured. They're trying to come into full fruition. And the walled garden is about protecting that very vulnerable baby thing that needs to come into the world. So there may be some themes about how are you going to protect your new seedling of an idea as it emerges from the soil. How are you going to work on the boundaries that you need to create so that particular new project can gestate properly? You may also see some really significant changes in the home and in your domestic life this particular week. I know for me personally, my house that I rent sold, and we're getting new owners. So you can see that in a domestic sphere, we're having an entire new chapter is beginning. And I'm going to have a new relationship with a new landlord and things like that. And I'm going to have to learn how to navigate a completely new dynamic. And that may be true for you in your personal life. Is what new dynamic are you experiencing this week and moving forward? Now, we do have a condition of an opposition here. We always look for the aspects at the new and full moons. And right now we've got an aspect of by whole sign of an opposition with Saturn and Pluto, the Saturn-Pluto South Node energy. The tough mudder, the meat grinder, as the Astrology podcast calls it. It hasn't been the most fun, at least not for me. There's challenges going on. I'm sure that the people that I've been speaking to have been going through their own challenges of coming, trying to initiate new things and coming across the walls of structure, trying to break down and let go of the old structures that no longer serve them. The old authoritarian power that is bubbling up from the volcanic depths that needs to be dealt with and rearranged. Remember, the South Node is associated with things, the tide going out, with things being let go of. And we may need to evaluate with this new start how that is going to be running up against the old power structures. We're going to have a new impulse of energy, and we need to figure out how that fits into the old outdated structure, and how do we gracefully navigate the transition process, because we're heading to a pretty big milestone in this process that we've been going through for the last, few years here, as we come to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in early 2020, as many of our power structures are shifting, and we're feeling that on a global level as well as on a personal level. So this summer is going to be giving you some pretty strong previews of that energy and the direction that we may be heading. This is a progress report this week as far as how you're doing. This new moon and this full moon kind of harken back a little bit. The full moon, of course, is going to be on the 16th of July, are harkening back to some of the energies that we initiated on the new moon in January 5th in particular. I don't know if I shared this on a video, but when I had a new moon in my 6th house, I had in January, I chipped a wisdom tooth and went into the dentist and got some feedback on my teeth and decided to do a very intensive kind of attempt to naturally heal some of my teeth and the cavity that I had in my wisdom tooth through diet and through mineralization and vitamins and things like that. And I have another dentist appointment on the day before the full moon eclipse. So that'll be my progress report. You could see how these things kind of match up. And one of two things is going to happen. They're going to be like, hey, good job, Spence. Your tooth is healing up and it looks good. Or they're going to be like, doesn't look like what you're intending is happening and you may need to get that tooth pulled. So one of those two things is going to happen. It's the progress report, right? So keep your eyes peeled for that this week, and what you're going to be, what is coming to terms from that earlier 6-month cycle that we initiated in January. Now, this is a new impulse in a different area of your chart, though, in the Cancer ruled area of your chart. So what you need to do is just look at the whatever house is represented. Okay, in this chart, for example, it's the 9th house. So if you were a Scorpio rising, for example, you would have a new start in your personal belief system. Maybe you're starting a whole new cycle associated with your long distance travel, with pilgrimages that you might take to find meaning in your life. The 9th house, of course, was a cadent house that was moving away from the angle on the 10th. And the 10th was associated with praxis or action. So for all of you Scorpio ascendants, maybe you're trying to figure out why you're taking the actions you are in the world. Maybe you are initiating a new set of beliefs out into the world, and that new set of circumstances is being born through the birth channel of this new moon. One of the things that's overused is in New Age type of language is the word portal. I get like for moons and things associated with the nodes, though, it's not the worst. It's not the worst use of that word. I like birth channel. That's something that I've been, absorbing through a guy like Robert Schmidt, who talks about the signs as birth channels and the deities as abstractions that want to be concretized into the world of form. We had two separate worlds that we were dealing with. One with the idealization and abstractions that are represented by the planets, and then one by the world that we live in of material forms that are coming into being and passing away. And the abstractions of the planets get concretized through that birth channel of the sign into the material forms and experiences that we have here on this planet. And, we have to examine now what is being born, what is coming through the birth channel. Is it something good? Is it something that you really need to pay attention to? It may not be good or bad. It may just be, and you may have to just deal with it. That's really, if you want to take a more of a Taoist perspective on it, a lot of things just are, and you can choose to experience them in a certain way, but there's a little bit of a natural order to these things where there's a little bit of light in the darkness, a little bit of darkness in the light. Everything is not black and white. If you experience something negative at this eclipse, realize that it may contain the seed potential for something good. If you're experiencing something good, be careful that you aren't setting yourself up for some challenges down the road. So it's all about balance, really. Eclipses in the ancient world were not something that astrologers or people really looked forward to. I mean, imagine that you didn't have NASA or these programs predicting when they would come, and you saw the sun start to disappear in the sky, something that you glorified as and deified and held as sacred, and it started to disappear. And you were like, oh shit, like something is swallowing the sun. And in the Jyotisha perspective, in the ancient tradition there, they thought of the North Node as a dragon, the head of the dragon in particular, Rahu, who was swallowing the sun. And you could see as the moon passes between, I'm sorry, what do we have here? So yeah, the moon passes between the sun and the earth. It blankets out the light from the sun at this new moon. Okay, so they thought of it as this like giant snake dragon creature swallowing up the vitality of the sun. And the interesting thing about that is we can think of it as like shutting off the light of that planet. And the sun, being the intellect and our rational faculty, is getting kind of the light switch flipped off for a little period of time. And that's why things go a little nutty at the eclipses. We're losing touch with some of that, that solar vitality and that energy. And when we shut that light off, other things are awakened. And in this case, the moon becomes extra powerful. So things that are bubbling up from the subconscious, our reflected light, our emotional lives, our things that are coming from the depths are bubbling up to the surface, and we're not really having the benefit of our royal dignified intellect to kind of maybe stop us from doing some things that may not be in our best interest. So be really careful when you are experiencing these eclipses, because you may not be in touch with every part of yourself, and everybody's going to be kind of experiencing this. And emotions that have been brewing over the past couple weeks are probably going to start erupting to the surface. That's my prediction for this. We've been going through some very challenging oppositions with Saturn and Pluto, with Mars and Mercury, and now the moon and the sun, and Venus is going to go through that, I don't know, that challenge over the next few weeks. And the energy of Cancer is not direct. And a lot of the times we will sit on stuff and it'll fester, and it'll be brewing underneath the surface. We'll be brooding emotionally. And you may start to see some of those things really come to light when the eclipses are starting to happen, especially at the full moon eclipse as well. So just be aware that everybody's going to be under these same transits, and have a little compassion for your fellow person. Don't try not to go off the rails. Don't make any huge decisions right at the new moon. Wait a little while. You're going to have a transition period to figure out whether what you're experiencing is coming from a place of reality or just coming from an over-emotional space. All right. So let's take a look at Wednesday. Let's move forward here a little bit. Bing, bang, boom. On Wednesday, we're still going to be going through this new moon phase. Late Tuesday, we've got that actual contact of the moon with Saturn and then with Pluto. So late Tuesday, early Wednesday, a little sticky. If I had to guess, going to be some sticky stuff going on. In the evening, we have another planetary ingress on Wednesday evening. We are going to be seeing the Venus move into the domicile of Cancer. There we go, right around 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday. So, like we said, Aphrodite is going to be going through the meat grinder here, through the challenging opposition aspects. And of course, Aphrodite, or Venus, is associated with creating beauty in our lives, with letting things come to her with a desire and attraction type of qualities. Heard a really great lecture on sect recently where we talked about having Venus, whether she is in sect or out of sect. Of course, sect being the team or the political team of planets that have power in a chart. And when a planet is in sect, it's able to access its best self, so to speak, or it's easier to manifest its significations without having to compromise its values. And when a planet is out of sect, generally there are compromises that have to be made. There may be things that are pulling us off course, and the more negative side of the planet may be manifested. Now you're saying, well, Venus is a nice planet, it's a benefic, and yes, it is. But what are the negative downsides of maybe an out-of-sect Venus? So during the day on Wednesday, Venus is going to be not necessarily on her own team, and you may be getting pulled off course with Venusian things when she is not in the sect in favor, or in your personal natal chart. If you're born during the day, Venus would be of the night sect. And you can tell that by seeing where the sun was at your birth. Was it above or below the horizon? So there's the horizon here. And if it was above, you are of the day sect. And if it was below the sun, that is, you are of the night sect ruled by the moon. Okay? And what does an out-of-sect Venus look like? Well, an out-of-sect Venus, the word that Bob Schmidt used was enchantment. It becomes enchanted by its idealization of form, of beauty, and of harmony. So there may be some things that are pulling you off of your center if you are getting too idealistic about creating the forms and structures and beauty and balance in your life if you have an out-of-sect Venus operating. And some of those things may be coming right into contact with cold, hard, volcanic reality. And there may be some hard truths that come up in your relationships, in your family, in the harmony that is happening within your domestic sphere. We can see right now also we have a condition of Venus going under the beams because it is within 15 degrees of the sun, so it is being weakened. It's getting ready to be reborn in the furnace of the sun. So you can think of a planet going into its conjunction with the sun as taking to its sick bed, so to speak. It's getting weakened by going under the beams, but it's getting ready to be reborn and start a new cycle. So we're heading towards that. And some of the Venusian qualities in your life may be starting to get a little bit weaker and not being able to be expressed in its purest form. Venus being in the domicile of the moon is offering up her significations to Venus to be harmonized. This is a really important concept. I think this was another really cool thing I'm learning from some lectures on zodiacal releasing. And the example that was given was from Einstein's chart, where he had a Venus in Aries, which is actually its exile. And eventually in his life, and so just to back up, that would mean that Mars is offering up his significations to Venus, being the ruler of Aries, to be softened. So eventually Einstein started out with a very hot temper, and eventually he seemed to mellow over time, according to his biographers. And Venus created a little bit of harmony in that area of his life and mellowed out his martial tendencies. So what does that mean for us in the sky now? Well, let's clear all this junk. And we will see that we've got this connection with Venus and the moon. So the moon is offering up her significations to be mellowed out by Venus right now. See that? So obviously the moon represents forms coming into being and passing away, the nurturing principle, things that have to do with popularity and relationship with the public and the masses. So maybe we are going to see a little bit of a pacification of the masses. I know that we're going through some really challenging things politically right now. And hopefully we'll see some of those things start to become resolved. I don't think it's not all going to be resolved at once, because we're dealing with a much larger cycle than any of us really understand from day to day. If we look at these things from a perspective of history, we can kind of see the ups and the downs. But when we're living it in everyday life, we get like really tossed about by, a news story, a speech someone said, did this person's favorite party, gain power? Did this person testify in front of the Congress? And it's all part of a bigger cycle of change. Really, it's change. And even if something looks like it's met a roadblock, all things are going to, all rivers from the top of the mountain reach the ocean eventually. And it's going to wear down over time. And even if something isn't to your liking right now, just wait a little bit. You are part of history. You are living history right now. And it doesn't mean you don't take actions that you need to take, because that's maybe your responsibility. You may be called to be a part of that historical change. But recognize that it's part of something bigger than you, and try to live through those cycles and changes with grace. A little patience goes a long way when we're dealing with larger term issues. We've had these stories come out about, concentration camps and immigration. We may see some movement with that, maybe with Venus coming into the sign of the Cancer here. Perhaps we'll have a little bit of harmony with that and some unification and some beautification of some of those issues, hopefully. Depending on what side of the political spectrum you fall on, I think most everybody can agree, I hope, that children are fairly innocent within this and deserve to be treated with respect. So hopefully we'll see some of those things happening. I don't want to start a political conversation, but this is a basic human rights thing, and I think that human decency should win in the end. And with the sign of Cancer, we're going to see, some of those issues being bandied about back and forth as we go through the opposition with Saturn and Pluto. Okay, so that's Wednesday. We're going to see the moon start to move into Leo towards the end of the day here. Okay. And that is going to trigger all that Mars Mercury stuff here in Leo. Remember, the moon is like those pins on the music box that are triggering the tuned keys. And you know, a moon Mercury Mars conjunction is going to flame things up. It may bring to light some of the areas of life in Leo, the Leo ruled area of your chart, and cause you to deal with some of the challenges inherent with your new identity that you're trying to get out into the world. Just my advice for all the Leo energy, being a Leo ascendant myself and dealing with that on a daily basis, is I'm going to try to humble myself here. I guess that's my advice. Humble yourself, because what I like to describe as the flaws with the Leo energy is, yes, it's good to believe in yourself and have pride, and to a decent amount of confidence is different than pride, I guess. But there is this moment where you can kind of get this look where you're looking around and you're like, who are you talking to? You can't possibly be speaking to me. If you feel like you're disrespected or something like that, you get this kind of this incredulous look, like you're above whatever someone is saying to you. And it's important not to fall victim to getting that part of yourself triggered, especially as the moon, Mercury, and Mars are all hanging out there, because it could be pretty easy. Your emotions could be tied up with, you know, your identity and your self-expression, and that may cause some challenges. It may also energize you. The moon in Leo is you know, very fiery. It's a fire sign. It's going to be making and applying trine to Jupiter, which is a good thing. It first has to pass through on Wednesday or early Thursday here, has to pass through a square with Uranus. So again, the moon is going to be triggering that kind of shake-up energy right here as it comes into its square with Uranus early Thursday morning now, okay? July 4th. This is our 4th of July holiday. So, you know, the fireworks might start early in your neck of the woods. But I think that's probably the most challenging aspect of the day. And as we move past the conjunctions with Mars and Mercury, we're going to see this nice applying trine to Jupiter in Sagittarius. And I'm feeling that this might be a pretty nice, see that trine there, which is the nature of Jupiter, okay? And it, of course, has the triangle there, the triangle aspect, the trigonal figure, we can say. And that is 120 degrees apart from the sign in question. And that is a positive conversation that's happening between the moon and Jupiter. There's positive communication. We think of the planets as witnessing and providing testimony for each other. So we're going to be triggering some of the nice qualities of this Jupiter in its own domicile of Sagittarius. Maybe just a nice time to relax, maybe hopeful and starting to feel a little bit more magical around this time of the week. Of course, try not to overdo it. It's important to set reasonable boundaries and not get too far ahead of yourself. This includes fireworks. With all this energy in the fire sign, this is bringing a thought to mind. With Mars and Leo and fire sign here, and Mercury and the moon and Jupiter and an aspect with that, Jupiter makes everything bigger. So we may see some of the craziest fireworks displays around. And with Mars being in Leo too, try not to light yourself on fire. Try not to don't get too overconfident holding the firework in your hand and have it blow up in your face. I mean, I think the potential for injuries with this particular lunation and arrangement of planets is actually pretty high. We may see bigger, badder, more expansive explosions. So follow all of your safety precautions. Make sure you have enough distance between you and the stuff that you're lighting up. Use common sense. I know that you may want to create some big spectacle, but in the end, it's not worth losing a finger over or an eyeball. So that is my maternal moment for the day, my Cancerian sun and Saturn in Virgo practical advice for you. So make sure that you are practicing proper safety measures and bring the fire extinguisher, okay, in case something happens. All right, so that's what we've got on the 4th of July here. Mercury is going to be slowing down. After the new moon phase, we're going to be heading into a crescent phase, which is where the moon is about 40 degrees, 0 to 40 degrees ahead of, oh wait, what do we got here? No, crescent phase is 40 to 90 degrees ahead of the sun. Okay, so we've got this distance here ahead of the sun. And then if the new moon the seed was trying to establish itself under the ground with new root systems, and like it was emerging from its shell, okay, then we're going to see maybe some of the stalk starting to emerge from the dirt after it's established that root system and shed its like protective covering. It's very vulnerable under the ground, and this crescent phase, we're learning to kind of mobilize our forward movement and get past some of the inertia that we may be feeling with the new cycle. At the beginning of any enterprise and new phase in your life, it may be difficult to get moving and get started because there are established hierarchies and patterns that we are a part of. And just getting yourself moving, getting yourself up off the couch, starting a new exercise routine, starting a new arrangement between you and your loved ones, it can just take some time to get established. And that's what we're going to be experiencing during this crescent phase, is a worked to an energetic working to establishing whatever the new cycle, the new impulse that we received at the new moon eclipse. Mercury is going to be slowing down to its retrograde station at the end of the week. So let's clear this again, and we're going to move forward into Friday. Okay. See, we've got the conjunction actually happens very early, or the trine, the trine of the moon and Jupiter happens very early on July 5th. And then we're moving past that beautiful aspect, and we are moving into what is next. We're going to be seeing the beginning of a connection between Mercury and Uranus. And remember, a connection is when a planet is aspecting within 3 degrees. So as we move forward, we're going to see Venus moving into about 3 degrees Cancer. It's going to start sextiling Uranus. So that may be triggering, again, those new impulses. But from this point, this particular aspect is a harmonizing one. So there may some of the changes that are coming up, the shocking changes, you may be starting to integrate them into your life a little bit more easily, and starting to harmonize the different disparate elements of your life. We're going to be seeing the moon starting to move through the end of Leo into the sign of Virgo very early on Saturday morning, the 6th. And with that is coming a little bit more, we may be sobering up a little bit on Saturday after, the holiday festivities of Thursday and Friday. And then it's back to work, okay? Like it's July 6th, it's a Saturday ruled by Saturn, time to Saturn up. Time to figure out where the rubber meets the road with all of the changes that you're putting into place. Time to take care of the details. Virgo being a Mercury ruled sign, it likes to set things into different categories. It likes to, separate the wheat from the chaff. Okay, so figure out what stays and what goes, and where you're going to be putting your energy over the next 6 months or years ahead, even. As we move to Sunday, we're going to see a connection, a trine aspect between the moon and Saturn and Pluto. So that is a positive aspect, a trine between those difficult planets that we've been experiencing. So maybe some of the truths and realities that you're coming to terms with, maybe they're starting to become a little bit more integrated in your life, and you're having some positive conversations with the authority figures and the hierarchies within your life, and moving forward into, practical, applicable changes. What we're going to be experiencing as we move into the evening on Saturday is the beginning of a connection between the Sun and Saturn, a connection of the opposition between the Sun and Saturn. See that? and that is within 3 degrees again. So again, the sun is the one that's going to be coming into the brick wall. Questions of identity, questions of the light of the mind, the intellect, how you are shining and putting your energy out there, how you're wielding your authority may come across and into conflict with a bigger authority. You know, Saturn is outside the orbit of the sun, and it generally is we call him Father Time. And, you know, everything is subject to the entropy of time. And just because you want something does not mean that it may be good for you, or that it may be part of the larger cycle of history. So we're going to get some more reality checks coming here, and you may start to feel that over the weekend. All right, so as we move through Saturday into Sunday, we're going to be moving into my birthday, 7/7. So what you're going to be seeing here is basically my solar return chart from the year. Yay! And of course, the solar return chart is the chart that happens when the sun returns to the exact position it was in your birth, and that was said to be kind of a theme for the year ahead. You can see right here at 1533. That's when my solar return is right here. Here we go. So in my solar return chart, I'm going to have a Sag ascendant with a retrograde Jupiter on the ascendant. That doesn't seem so bad. But, sun in the 8th house, Saturn in the 2nd. Maybe some negotiations that happen between my own personal resources and the resources of others in the 2nd and 8th house, respectively. Now, universally, what does that mean? What are we experiencing on Saturday? Well, hey, guess what, everybody? Mercury is stationed retrograde. Yay! So it's slowed down, and it is starting to backtrack at 4 degrees Leo in everybody's chart, not just the solar return chart of my birthday. And we're going to be reconsidering some of the actions that we may have been initiating over the past few weeks, maybe having to redo things, maybe having to submit our mercurial will to the divine will rather than our personal will. And that can be a blessing. This is something that I'm learning from my teacher, Adam Ellenboss, that retrograde cycles don't have to be these big, frustrating things. If you let go of the oars, if you feel like you're paddling upstream, you may be paddling in an unproductive direction. And if you allow yourself to let go of the oars and just go with the current of your life, you may find that you go down. First of all, you don't exhaust yourself. Second of all, you may find that you end up somewhere that you didn't originally intend, but is a better position than you were before, because it's in alignment with the divine will rather than your own ego and your own egoic will. And of course, there's all the cliched things like, Mercury is connected with technology and communication, so make sure you're double checking everything. You may experience some slowdowns and some frustrating communications. I know as Mercury went into its shadow, I had an update of my operating system so I could make a presentation for my conference that I'm doing. And I had to update the software to be able to update my Keynote on my Mac, and it ended up slowing everything down, and I had to reboot my old operating system. So always make a backup, okay? And now I'm able to make this video because I had a backup of my old system. So it's really important during especially Mercury retrograde to back everything up. It might not be the best time to make a huge change or to buy new communications equipment. Although, who knows? I mean, you can't schedule everything according to a 3-week retrograde period. Sometimes you're going to have the conversation. Sometimes you're going to have to try to make the video. Sometimes you're going to have to buy something that's related to communication or travel or, a vehicle of some sort. Just keep in mind that there may be some things that you have to redo. You may have to, look at the contract again. You may have to do the video over again. I know my buddy Adam just posted that he did a reading for somebody and forgot to press the record button. It happens. I did something similar where I recorded one of these week ahead videos a few weeks ago at the anaretic degree of, I don't know if it was the moon or Mercury, like where it was changing signs. and the whole file was corrupted and I had to do it over again. It just comes with the territory. So try to relax if something like that doesn't work out exactly how you're planning. Take a break and then go for it again. Okay. That retrograde is going to happen around 7:15 p.m. Eastern time, around 4 degrees. It's going to station direct again at the end of the month. So July overall as a month is going to be a little bit of a reevaluation of some of the new identities that we're taking on and how we're communicating those out into the world. And you may have to reevaluate the systems of the delivery systems that you're putting out there as well. All right. I think that's about what I've got for today. I'm going to be heading over to the conference here pretty soon. I've got a talk I'm giving tomorrow, and I'm going to be meeting up with all my good friends and hopefully interviewing some folks over there and maybe putting that up on my channel as well. So you might be seeing those already if I have enough time to post them up. And thanks again for supporting my channel here. And I appreciate all the feedback that you've been giving me on the comment section. I hear you. I see you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you spreading the word and things like that too. It definitely takes a village to do stuff like that. And I'm hoping to try to continue to be consistent like this and bring you the best things that I can with the time and energy that I've got. And hopefully you're finding it valuable, and want to say thank you for being a part of it. So I will talk to you next week. Hopefully everybody survives eclipse season. Remember to breathe. Remember that everybody's going through this change and is becoming a little bit destabilized, and you'll get through it. This too shall pass. All right, everybody. I'll see you later. We'll talk to you soon.